All right. Again, my name is Jeremy Staley. I'm with CEC. And this is a neighborhood traffic calming public meeting for the Sandusky Avenue, Quebec Avenue between 121st Street and 118th Street. With me are also Russell Bausch and Mary Kate from CEC. So a little bit about this. Again, we're going to record this for City of Tulsa to be put on their website. So just know whatever you say or whatever will be on video. And again, use the chat box if you do have some quick questions. We can try and answer them as we go along. But other than that, just please hold off from talking until we get to the end of the presentation, and we can go forward with that. This project started back in 2017. Ms. Hoffines was tired of speeding going on the street, and she asked for an application for neighborhood traffic calming program. She filled that out and submitted it. That started the whole process, and in doing so, she became our traffic calming advocate for the street and has been our point of contact on this project the whole way through. We performed our traffic study in August of 2017, and there are 2 warrants that are required for a street to qualify for speed humps. And those warrants are the 85th percentile must be 5 miles per hour or greater than the posted speed limit, or in some cases, the unposted speed limit, which in this case is 25 miles per hour. On this project, 85th percentile was just slightly above it, but it was above it. It was 30.2 miles per hour. The second warrant that must be met is that the average daily traffic must be between 600 and 5,000 vehicles per day. And this project had 848 vehicles per day, so it certainly met the 500 vehicle per day warrant. There's a number of other warrants that are required or considerations that we take into account beyond just those 2 warrants. Some of those are, well, there must be residential streets abutting this project. It's not intended for commercial areas. The street must not have more than 1 traffic lane in each way, meaning we're not going to put this on a 4-lane roadway. This is intended for residential streets. The street must be at least 300 foot in length, which in this case we will exceed. There must be a regulatory speed limit of 30 miles per hour or less. And the street needs to have curb and gutter to prevent cars from doing end arounds, meaning they'll just avoid the speed humps and drive around it, typically through people's yards or driveways to get through there. And speed humps will also not be installed whenever we have traffic signals on both sides of the ends of the collector street, because that is intended to be a major thoroughfare, not a major thoroughfare, but a higher rating street. It's intended for more traffic to be on those streets. So once we've qualified this project and we've met the warrants and we've determined that construction funding is available, we move to the next step, which is the petition and endorsement process. And a list of street addresses is obtained from INCOG. We give them the street limits, a shapefile, and they give us the number of addresses with that, all the addresses included in an Excel spreadsheet. We provide this to our street advocate. And there are 2 qualifications that must be met with the petition process. One, we have to obtain signatures from at least 80% of the people living on that street, whether they're rental properties or they own the property. If there is a large apartment complex, that only counts as 1 vote. So every property or every person living on that street gets a chance to vote on that. In this particular case, we had 85% of the people on the street sign that petition. They don't have to sign yes or no necessarily. We just need at least 80% to show that they are aware of this project going on. The other caveat is 66% of the people living on the street have to be in favor of these speed humps. And in this case, it was like 82% or so. Is I think all but 1 person that signed that petition, everybody was in favor of it. So we well exceeded the 66%. Now, keep in mind, I know some of you on this meeting are probably not living on that street, and this may concern you, but keep in mind, this project is intended for the people living on that street. It is intended to slow the speeds so that the people can then have a higher quality of life and not feel that they're going to get hit walking on their street or riding a bike by people speeding on that street. So the next part of this petition process is the neighborhood association or homeowner association, if there is one in the area, has to convene and be in agreement that the speed humps are something they want to pursue. And in this particular case, the Wind River Homeowners Association signed this on November the 14th last year, and Ms. Hoffines provided that to us. So the HOA was in favor of it. We met all the percentages. So now we moved on to the next phase, which was we developed the plans, we developed the layouts, and we have mailed everybody along that street copies of those plans and the letter, which is why you're here today. And I understand Ms. Hoffines may have put that on a Facebook page or something else, or the HOA may have done so, which whether they did or not is inconsequential, but we told her they're welcome to do that. That way everybody in the neighborhood gets word of this meeting and can participate. So I am now going to share my screen, and we're going to go over those plans real quick. Keep in mind there is spacing limitations for these speed humps. We can't just put them wherever we want. The city of Tulsa has a criteria of where we're supposed to put these speed humps. We typically put one between a block, and a block being at least 250 or 300 foot. In some cases where we have very, very long runs, there may be a block where one is missing, and that's okay because we're looking at the big picture for the entire travelway. And so take that into account. There are some projects where we may not have one per block, but we do not want the distance between these speed humps to exceed 600 feet. 600 feet being a key number. If the spacing is higher than that, some people will gun it. They'll try and speed up in between the speed humps, slow down, hit a hump, then speed up again. And it's just ridiculous having that going on. Hear people revving their engines and everything as they go through there. So we can't just put them 900 foot apart and only put two on this project. That's not the way it works. So I'm going to share my screen real quick, and we'll go over the locations of those. Okay. All right. I assume everybody can see my screen. Is that correct? Excellent. Thank you for the head shakes. Appreciate it. So we are at the north end of this project on 118th Street. Quebec and Sandusky are moving down toward the right, if you will. So our first speed hump is just south of the intersection, about 177 foot south of the intersection. We then have a gap of about 320 some odd foot to hit the next block between 118th Drive and 118th Boulevard. Moving to the next screen. We then have another speed hump just north of the Sandusky, where it veers off to the right into the private neighborhood, as you can see. And then another one here. Keep in mind, the distance between those two speed humps is around 450 foot. And then our last speed hump we have in between Pittsburgh Avenue and Oswego. And then we have about 260 foot between that and the intersection at 121st. So we only have 5 speed humps here. I'll go through those again here real quick so you can see those locations one more time. All right, the next sheet that I'm going to show you is our the speed hump detail itself, so you can get an idea of what this is. In the top left corner is a cross section that goes across the street. Here in the middle is our plan view. So that cross section shows that we have a gap on the, well, actually the curb detail section BB shows that we've got a gap of 2 foot between the face of the curb and where this taper takes place for the speed hump. And there's a 24-inch taper, as you can see on this detail, that goes up to the full height of the speed hump. This section AA goes longitudinally across through the street. So these are parabolic in shape. They go from 0 inches being flush with the existing grade to being full height, 3.5 inches height within 6 foot. Then there is a 10-foot flat table before it parabolically curves on down. These parabolic curves are designed in a manner for a car to be able to easily travel 20 mile an hour or so. I've even driven 25 mile an hour on these before, and I don't think it's too uncomfortable, although if I had a cup in my hand, it would spill on me. But these things are intended to be able to drive over at a reasonable speed and not require people to come to near complete stops when you go over those, much like you see speed bumps that are in commercial areas sometimes in shopping centers. you pretty much have to just roll over those things or you're going to get a massive jolt. This detail also shows where the signs are going to be located. We have 2 speed hump signs, one on each end, to be seen from both directions on the street. And they have a little arrow pointing down to again show, hey, the speed hump is right here. We do this for a couple reasons. One is to, again, be noticed for drivers to notice that the speed hump is there. And secondly, if this is indeed a snow plow route, when we get cold weather in the winter time, or if somebody's just nice and decides to plow that street, they've got a sign to let them know where this is. That way they don't hit it and damage it with their equipment. You can see also the striping that we have. This is all striping per the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, MUTCD as we call it, and that striping is intended to be noticed very clearly driving at night. And these are the general dimensions. Let's see, discuss those. I do want to let you know the funding source for this project is the Improve Our Tulsa 2 bond issue that was voted on last November and passed. The city will be constructing all of these speed humps internally. They'll be able to construct typically 6 or 7 of these speed humps for the price that a contractor can do just for one. So we're able to extend our dollars greatly by having them do that. The offset of that is this is not the city's maintenance crew's primary responsibility. And it's important to know that because they construct these speed humps within a given season and they construct it when they have availability. So we're not going to be able to get out there and construct these speed humps tomorrow, which that's not going to be possible anyway, but they can't move on it too quickly. So just keep that in mind. But we were able to get a lot more of these speed humps constructed across the city for streets just like this one and maximize our dollars doing it that way. So we're really pleased with that. We are going to have a 2-week comment period after this meeting to allow people to access the video online and to email us or call us, and I'll provide my email address and phone numbers for everybody in here shortly. So, all right, we're back. Did I hear? Okay, there we go. All right. Yes, so let me go ahead just for the video sake and for everybody here of being able to email me comments or to call me if you have comments. My phone number is 918-663-9401. Again, it's 918-663-9401. And my email address is Jeremy, Jeremy, .Staley, STAHLE, at connect, like connect a cable, followed by CEC, CharlieEchoCharlie.com. So once again, that's Jeremy, Jeremy, .Staley, STAHLE, at connectcec.com. I'm now going to open this up. I will ask everyone to unmute because I don't believe I can physically do them, but you're welcome to unmute and ask some questions. And okay, we do have a question from Darren Burns and stated there was no detail for the poles and signage. What size are the poles? And are they required? Yes, the signs are required and the poles are indeed required. Those poles are probably 2-inch, 1.5 to 2-inch poles. Am I right on that, Russell?
Yeah, the poles they're right about 2 inches, and they're square tubing, perforated, just like the other signposts that you see all throughout the city.
Thank you. And yes, the signpost, he also asked, will they be between the sidewalk and the curb? And yes, that is correct. I believe the offset of the sidewalk we have on this project is good enough for us to be able to have that right there. But there'll be plenty of room between the back of curb and the sidewalk. People aren't going to hit their head on a sign. Besides, the sign will be up well enough out of the way.
Yeah, the bottom of the sign will be 7 foot up.
Yes, thank you. And if there is irrigation in that area, the city will do their best to locate that and make sure that we avoid that. If you do have a service that maintains that, obviously having them involved at the beginning of this construction project so we know for sure where those are at would be useful. And the next question you had is, what is the anticipated reduction in speed with the speed humps? That's a good question. And typically when we construct these, we follow up shortly thereafter with a traffic study to see how effective were these. And we typically wait a few weeks to do this, and we intend to do that. That way we document it. But in most cases, it reduces the speed by 2 to 3 mile per hour, which is enough to get it. In this case, our 85th percentile was around 30.2. It would get us well within that safe zone of 5 mile per hour of what is considered acceptable by the city. Mary Kate, correct me if I'm wrong. I know we had some 85th percentiles in some cases that were up to around 35 mile per hour in the past. And didn't this pull it all the way down to below 30 mile per hour on our test?
Yeah, it did. It usually gets it within 1 to 2 miles per hour of the speed limit.
Yeah.
Around 26.
Thank you, Mary Kate. So we've done this on a number of occasions, and it's reduced it every time. And in some cases, if it is a cut through street, which this really is not, but if people use this streets like this to avoid an intersection, say 51st and Harvard, we typically see the volume counts go down a fair amount as well, because people no longer want to use that as a cut through street. Okay. Any other questions? I'm here to answer any questions that you may have, help you to understand any parts of this project.
Could you repeat the average reduction of speed?
Sure. It's a function of how fast people go on the street. We've had some of these studies where the speed limit is 25 and our 85th percentile was up to 35 mile per hour. And in those cases, these speed humps were able to reduce the speed 7 or 8 mile per hour to get it down within just a couple mile per hour of the posted speed limit. On this particular project, since the 85th percentile wasn't as egregious as that, it still will probably reduce it 2 or 3 mile per hour, and it will get it much closer to 25 mile per hour. As Mary Kate stated, we typically get within 1 to 2 miles per hour of that speed limit, which in this case is 25 mile per hour. So now that is the 85th percentile. It is not the average or whatever. So there were some cars that went way over the speed limit, and those anomalies will get pulled down dramatically, because you're not going to be able to go 45 mile per hour over these speed humps without damaging a vehicle. And those are the culprits we're after. We don't want those fast speeds going through the neighborhood. In fact, one way I've used to test this is to try and drive 27, 28 mile an hour over these speed humps. You can do it. It's pretty uncomfortable. And it affects every vehicle a little differently based on the wheel base and so forth. So some vehicles can easily traverse it going 25 mile per hour. Others are going to have to go closer down to 20. There may be even some that have to go a little slower than that, but it affects every vehicle style just a little different. But I will state, as long as the vehicle is street legal, you won't scrape the bottom of your vehicle. You won't be damaging the bottom of your car as long as it is street legal. But if there's some lowrider vehicles out there in your neighborhood, it could cause them a problem.
When do you anticipate construction or installation beginning?
We are getting close to the cold period. Today's the first day of fall. And generally by early to mid-November, it gets too cold to be able to lay this asphalt. Our hopes are that the 2-week period, comment period, when it comes and ends, we'll be able to move into construction shortly after that. So if we get a clear window with the city's construction crews, it is possible we could get these installed by the end of October, but we can't make any promises on that. We don't know what their schedules are, but our hopes are to get these installed before the cold weather hits in.
And if things go well and everything, how long does it take once the project begins?
I would imagine having 5 speed humps, typically the city can do 1 of these a day, installing the asphalt. Does that sound about right, Russell? Typically about 1 a day.
Yeah, that's pretty close to how long it takes.
They will typically do the edge milling all in 1 day, and then they'll move from one site to the next, typically 1 day after another. And it may be a few days after that for them to put the signs up and the striping. But they will, Once they put out their construction signs to get the asphalt speed humps, they typically try and hit one a day. So with that being the case, they should be done with this in about a week's time. Granted, there will be follow-up work, as mentioned, with the signage and the striping. And of course, the signs could go in after it gets cold, and depending on the temperature at the time when striping is done, it could extend past that November deadline, perhaps.
Yeah. And the upkeep on the speed humps and the signs and everything is, will continue to be a city responsibility.
That is correct. They are the city's property. And these speed humps, they last a long time. We use an S5 asphalt. It's a fairly smaller aggregate. It doesn't allow it to weather as easily with the freeze thaw cycles and so forth, like you may have with the more coarse aggregate. And these things should last a very long time. Any other questions? Those were some good questions, Hugh. Thank you.
And you're going to have this recorded and posted in a 2-week period, did you say?
The posting of the video is supposed to be done as soon as possible by the city, but we want a 2-week comment period after this meeting to be able to make any changes to the plans if they are possible. We will take every request and look into it and see if there's something that we can do. In some cases, people say, I don't want that speed hump in front of my house. I want to move there. We'll see if we can possibly do that and meet that. We can't always do that in some situations, but we will consider it and see if it's possible.
It looks like someone has asked about, are there any issues with motorcycles?
No, motorcycles can go over these just fine as well. And bicyclists have a big enough gap between the front face of curb and where that taper transition begins. They've got a 2-foot gap in there and then the taper as well, which is over a 2-foot length too. So they've got plenty of room to be able to navigate through instead of having to go over the speed humps. I have not heard of any issues with motorcycles with this. Speed humps.
Yeah, on older design of speed humps, we had some people that are riding bicycles that they're complaining about the speed humps, and so we actually came back and redesigned them so to make it more friendly for bicyclists to go past. It's like Jeremy's saying, there's a 2-foot gap between the edge of curb and the beginning of the speed hump. Plus, it's a really narrow taper, so a really shallow taper, and so the bikes can traverse it very easily now.
I see we've got from Mr. Duffy asked about, can we guarantee the street legal vehicle will not scrape? I personally can't guarantee that. I have not heard of a street legal vehicle scraping on one of these speed humps. Again, they only raise up 3.5 inches and it's a very smooth transition through there. I've not heard complaints about that. I do know that if they are not street legal, there have been issues in the past, and the city's policy on that is, your vehicle is not street legal. We are not trying to design a speed hump or street navigable ways in order to meet a vehicle that is not street legal. Mr. Vincent asked about who would accept liability for damage that might be created. That's a good question for the city. Again, I've not heard of cars being damaged on these as long as they are street legal. Russell, do you want to have any comment over that?
That's something I'd have to talk to my supervisor about. I don't know the answer to that right off.
I cannot imagine that if you're not exceeding the speed limit and your vehicle is street legal, that you will scrape on it at all or damage any tires or wheels.
Keep in mind, the speed bumps that you have in malls and things like that sometimes go higher than this, and they're very abrupt. And normally when people go to the mall, they don't think, am I going to damage my car on a speed bump or going into a Walmart parking lot? So keep that in mind. There are a number of neighborhoods in Tulsa that have these speed humps already, and you're welcome to go drive those. If you would like to know where any of those are nearby, we can certainly get back with you with some addresses. I don't know of any real quick off the top of my head down on the southwest part of town. I know we have one in Sun Meadows, just in between Yale and Harvard, just south of the turnpike, that main drive-through run on through Sun Meadows. We've got, I don't know, 15 or 20 installed in that long mile run. It's quite a few.
That's between Yale and Sheridan.
Yale and Sheridan, thank you. Appreciate that.
Hey, Jeremy, I've got a quick question. So as somebody that lives on this street and has young children, I'm all for this. What's the normal pushback you guys would get on this? What is the process for that? And is this still up for discussion, or is this going through and we're just going to we're having a conversation about it?
The public meeting is to make you aware that this project is happening. All of the hoops have been, we've gone through all of the hoops. There's been a public process for the petition. The HOA agreed on it. So every stopping point that was available, we've already passed through. But at this point, just don't think that your comments are just getting blown off, because we want to seriously listen to any questions or take anything into consideration, and anything that's within our power to still meet the intents of this project and to satisfy a request, we'll do our best to meet that need.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Let's see. So there's a Ferrari in here. It's got a 4-inch ground clearance. You should be fine. Again, it's a 4-inch ground clearance, but keep in mind that this, wish I could be driving a Ferrari. Keep in mind that it's a parabolic transition. So you're not jumping 3.5 inches very quickly. It's a very smooth transition, and then you're over a 10-foot span before that transition occurs back down. So it actually sounds worse than it really is. You'll be fine driving that Ferrari with that 4-inch ground clearance. It should not be a problem. If any changes are made due to the comments, do we see a revised plan? Mr. Burns asked that. We don't mail that whole new set of plans out, but we certainly could make it available to Ms. Hoffines to publish that on a Facebook page, if that's a neighborhood thing or what have you. We certainly can do that to get that word out, and I'm sure Ms. Hoffines would be happy to do that.
We can send by email.
Yeah, and again, we'll send her the plans, and if she whatever the neighborhood's way of being able to inform everyone, we're just not going to take that responsibility to mail plans out to everybody all over again. But we will certainly send the revised plans out to people who could get it into your hands or make it available to you. These are good questions. Thank you all. Any other questions?
Jeremy?
Yes.
So there's a question about, is there room to remove one speed hump? I know that some people were talking about the homes that are close to 118th, not facing the street, and wondering if in total it could be reduced to 4. Would that change the location? What are the thoughts on that?
It is possible if we take into consideration the 600-foot spacing and we waive we want one every one block, which we've done in a few situations in the past. Typically that's for a long street. We did Cincinnati between 21st and 21st between 3rd and 31st Street, I believe, over by the gathering place. And there was a few we pulled out of there. We'll certainly consider it and look into that. It's possible we may be able to remove one of those. I think I did look at this at one point in time when you asked about that a couple weeks back, and we could still hit our 600-foot spacing or less and be able to pull one of those out. It would not be the one at that northern end, more than likely. Otherwise, if we pull that speed hump all the way south of 118th Drive, people could speed on that first block unimpeded. There'll be nothing to slow them down. And that's not commonly what we do. We try and thin it out from the beginning and end somewhere and still keep that 600-foot spacing. But that is something we can consider if that is something that the HOA wants us to move forward with.
So it would change the location of all of them?
Some would slide slightly, yes. They would move. More than likely, we would keep the ones on the end the way they are, both north of 121st and south of 118th, and the 3 in the middle would be the ones that could slide around slightly. So if the intent is to remove the one on that northern block, it would fail trying to do that. I know we've had projects before in the past where we've had 15 speed humps on a whole mile long street, and some people are like, that's just a lot of speed humps. You know, when on my route, I'm gonna have to drive over 10 of those. Is there any way we can reduce 1 or 2 of those? And we were able to take that into consideration. And in some cases, we're able to pull 2 or 3 of them out. Any other questions? I appreciate you all coming tonight to be a part of this meeting and asking your questions.
Jeremy, very nice job. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. I don't want to keep anybody here longer. I know we all have other things we want to do tonight. So I'll just give another minute for anyone to ask any further questions. Oh, we did have another question from Stacy. Okay, let's see. Stacy Duff, or Mr. Duffy. Why were the Wind River HOA members not notified of this effort until it was already approved? That I do not know. We do request that the HOA sign off on this. As far as the internal communication within the HOA, the city does not get involved on that. That is a question to ask your HOA. I do know there's been some in the past where they looked at it simply as this. The city required so many percentage of signatures and so many people to be notified, and they followed the logic that these people on the street that this project is designed for have spoken, they're in favor of it, we've hit the percentages, and they were fine signing off on it. There's been some other HOAs where they're like, well, we're gonna hold this until we're able to have our big general meeting and discuss it and make sure everyone's in favor. And in most cases, that just delayed the speed humps going in, and rarely has it stopped them from going in. But that's all internal handling within the HOA, and we don't pry down into the business within that.
Sure, I appreciate the response, Jeremy, and thank you for an excellent presentation.
You're welcome, Mr. Duffy.
Just a couple of things. One point of correction. You stated earlier in the meeting that the HOA members supported the installation of the speed humps. That is not correct. The majority of HOA members in Wind River do not support these speed humps.
Okay.
Furthermore, the board acted outside of what the majority of the HOA members believe was their scope of responsibility and are prepared to take legal action to cease any activity to install speed humps until the neighborhood can be properly studied and the HOA members' wishes can be taken into consideration. We believe that the HOA board acted on behalf of a small percentage of the neighborhood without notifying the full HOA membership. We believe that this was done intentionally and outside their scope of responsibility, and we are prepared to take legal action to stop it.
Okay. What the city is going to do, they're just going to hold off on this, which we've done this in the past, until the HOA comes to an agreement either with a yes or no. So as to the question we answered earlier, this is a definite go. Obviously, if this is causing issues with the HOA at this point in time, the city is not going to get involved at that, and they're going to let this be handled by the HOA itself. So whether legal action needs to be done or not would between you and the HOA, but we'll just wait to hear back from the HOA board over how to handle that. And I don't know who the president is. I know Ms. Hoffines can keep us updated of the progress of that.
This is Hugh Rackley. I'm Hugh Rackley. I'm the president of the board.
Who is?
And I'm not aware of any survey or anything that has been done of the entire HOA that says that the entire HOA is opposed to this. And all of the access to all of the areas except for this street have access to their homes without going over a speed hump. So I really don't see why that is a concern to the people that don't live on this street.
That is correct. There is not one single house that does not live on this street that could not travel a different way and avoid the speed hump.
Yeah, listen, we all pay a lot of money in dues to drive by that beautiful park and the ponds and the pond and the pool area. Your contention that we can just go out the backside of the neighborhood and avoid that area is frankly insulting and ridiculous, but we'll save that for the courts.
Okay. Russell, do you have any other words over this? I know that's typically the way the city has handled it, is we'll just step back and wait until this gets handled internally within the HOA. Is that correct? That's what we've done before.
Yes, that is correct. Yeah, we'll wait till the HOA approves it, and if they don't approve it, then we'll just hold off until there's agreement on it.
Can you
Hey,
clarify
so
that?
Hugh, is John speaking for the board, or Hugh, what is the
I'm speaking,
situation here?
I'm speaking as an individual HOA member,
Okay,
not,
you represented that you were speaking for the majority of the board, though.
no, sir, I did not.
No, he represented, he was speaking for the majority of the HOA itself. Board.
Understood.
I have this is Darren Burns, and I have a question. Since you already have a document from the HOA stating that it's been approved, what would prevent you from still proceeding with the construction of it, given the other criteria have been met?
The other criteria, I mean, every hoop has been passed at this point in time, but whenever there is an internal issue within the HOA, and there's threats of lawsuit, the city doesn't want to get involved in this because it's an internal dispute within the HOA, be it between the board and members within the HOA, or sometimes even amongst the officers on the board. And the city's policy is they're not going to get in the midst of a HOA disagreement. And we have historically just pulled back for a few months until a decision has been made and a consensus, and then been able to move forward with that. But
Okay, so then this is Darren again. So with that, then the people that are against it, should there be an accident and a kid is hit, then they would be taking on responsibility for delaying the construction of, some speed reduction.
that'd be a bit of a stretch to assume that it's their fault. But
That's kind of what he's, it's, come
Hey,
on.
so how do you define this, the problem that you're discussing? Like if it's one human being, is it 20 human beings? Like, give us the definition of what would stop you from doing it. Like,
are you talking to the city and us?
yes, talking to you, Jeremy.
Well, you can't put a price tag when it comes to human life, but the city is following the policy that we have, and we've crossed all.
I'm not talking about a human life. I'm talking about one human disagrees or 20 humans that disagree. Like, what is you have your percentages of people on the street that requested it, and then now we have people that are not directly impacted by it. Do you have some number, like 50% of the neighborhood have to be upset if one person is upset? Like, help us understand what the barrier is, and then John can clarify if he has that, and if
Sure.
we have reason to delay this.
Right. And I understand what you're saying. And this falls outside the city's program. What this really comes down to is the city is going to pull back and wait until the HOA board with the current officers comes to an agreement and says, we're ready to move forward with this, and we'll move forward with. So it becomes an internal discussion within your.
Haven't they already done that? I mean, Hugh, didn't you say that?
That is.
Wasn't that already completed?
It took place back in November last year. It's my understanding that the board officers may have changed since then. And so the city does not want to get involved in this because they're not going to move forward with the project and then someone throws a lawsuit at the city. They don't want that. They don't want to cause strife within a neighborhood. So they pretty much pull back and let the people in the neighborhood fight amongst themselves to come up to a decision on this. But as soon as we're given the go-ahead to move forward, the city will move forward with that. And that's the way we.
What dictates a fight amongst if there's one dissenter or if there's 20? I'm trying to understand how do you define a fight between the HOA? I mean, there's no one, you never have 100%. There's never unanimity when you get to an HOA board.
Right.
I mean,
You're absolutely right. And I don't know what that fine line is. All I know is if we receive confirmation from the current HOA board that we are all on board with this and we are ready to move forward with this project, we know we have dissenters within the neighborhood and we're prepared to handle that. I believe at that point we'll move forward. Is that correct, Russell? Until the HOA board comes to give us that direction, we'll just basically be on pause.
So that would come from the president of the board who's in attendance.
That is correct.
Perfect.
Jeremy, from what I understand, that's already happened. I mean, I get that I'm the one dissenter here. And listen, if the majority of the HOA wants these, I'm not going to fight it, but I know that that's not the case. All I'm here for is to stick up for the HOA members that weren't involved in this process and say, hey, we want a voice in this. This is not just up to the people that live on that street. It affects all of us. And all I ask is that, hey, if we're going to do this and we're going to support it, and if our board is going to sign off on it, it should be at the direction of the majority of the HOA members, not just 15 or 20 people that live on that street. That's all. That's all I'm asking for.
Right, you've got a very valid point, and that all deals with the inner workings within the HOA. You felt that you were never approached by this, you weren't heard, you never even had an opportunity to voice your dissension with it. So my advice would be to have a HOA meeting at your next general meeting and discuss this and invite everybody to come be a part of that meeting. And as when we're able to hear back from the president of the HOA that they're ready to move forward with this, then we'll move forward with the project. But there needs to be a discussion within the HOA before we move forward with this. I know it's probably not the answer some of you are looking for. And this has happened before. A board has signed off on it. We get to the public meeting, and that is the purpose of this public meeting, is to make awareness of things. And there's people that are like, I never knew a thing about this. I'm upset with my board. And that's worthy of a conversation at a board meeting, and have an item to be able to talk about that. And then we'll wait to hear back from the board. So we're not trying to say we didn't follow the right protocol, because we did. And we're here, we're just going to put it on pause until we hear back from the president of the HOA that they're on board with this and they're good moving forward with it.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Jeremy. I appreciate the presentation.
You're welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, Miss. Any other questions or comments?
Thank you very much.
You're
Hey,
welcome.
Jeremy,
Yes, sir.
this is Aaron. I got a question for you. Is there any downside to installing these that you've seen?
The downside.
Yeah. What is the downside?
Well, they reduce the traffic volumes typically. They reduce the speeds that we're aware of. I really don't know of any downside. The neighborhood I live in Wausau has had speed humps put in, and they used plastic ones. And unfortunately, they broke up after about 5 or 7 years of use, and the city had to come back and put in concrete ones. One pro I will say with these asphalt ones, they will last a very long time. More than likely, the next time they will be touched is when there is a non-arterial maintenance zone project in your neighborhood where they're resurfacing the streets. And at that point in time, the speed humps will probably be replaced, and probably the signage and everything as well. I really don't know of any cons on this. In some cases, depending on how close drives are, if we have neighborhoods where the drives are really close together, which is not the situation at the Wind River here, but in some cases, the drives are so close to where when people back out of their drives, they bump into the speed hump with the back of their vehicle, just because there's not a lot of space between the driveways. But we've got a lot of real estate on this project, and that should not be a problem here.
Just a real,
Can you
just
think
a
of
real quick point of clarification. Darren asked what the downsides to these speed humps were, and he directed Jeremy and while I appreciate Jeremy's response, I think it should be memorialized the fact that Jeremy works for CEC and he's paid to install, put forth these efforts to install these speed humps. That's Darren, that's kind of like, asking Colonel Sanders, what's the downside to eating chicken? So, well, Jeremy, I appreciate your response. I also know that you're not going to sit there and tell them the downsides. There's a long list of downsides that people have documented to speed humps. Do those downsides offset the positive? Hey, I get it, guys. A child's life is worth anything. I know that we have an issue we need to deal with, but let's keep in mind that when we ask these kinds of questions of Jeremy, you're not asking somebody that doesn't have an ulterior motive. I mean, nothing against you, Jeremy, but you're here to sell the speed humps. I get it.
Well, no,
Duly noted, Mr. Duffy. Duly
I
noted.
would respectfully have to disagree with that and say that he is an engineer and he's an expert on the matter. And his opinion, they have come up with a speed calming device, and this is it.
Well, okay. I
Jeremy,
get,
do you make any money if we buy the speed humps?
do I what?
Do you
No.
make any money if we buy the speed hump? Okay.
I do not make any money. As a matter of fact, CEC's been working with the city of Tulsa since October of 2015, helping them to manage the traffic calming program. So we've been at this thing for 5 years now. We've dealt with a lot of public, we've dealt with a lot of complaints, we've dealt with a lot of people that were very grateful the speed humps have come in and have seen immediate changes with the speeds on their neighborhood. But Mr. Duffy, you're right about the whole negative things. I thought I would read the city of Tulsa's neighborhood traffic calming program where they talk about speed humps. And first I want to caveat this to say that the city of Tulsa went through a very thorough vetting process looking at different ways to reduce speed on these neighborhood streets many years ago. And you can put, curvy streets in there, you can narrow the street, you can do different striping things. There's different things that can be done. And after a lot of research, the city determined that these speed humps are the most economical and get the job done for the best price. And so within that, there are some disadvantages, like you said, and I apologize, I probably should have pulled this out. So one is it can cause noise. If there's loose items in a landscaping truck with lawn mowing equipment, they drive over these speed humps, you're going to hear it rattle more than if it was just a nice flat street. If there are no curb and gutters there, which typically the city only installs these on curb and gutter streets, people will skirt or avoid those speed humps. They'll drive through people's drives, knock over mailboxes, trash cans, whatever, to avoid a speed hump. And we've certainly seen it before in the past. There is a potential slowness to the emergency vehicles, and the city is very much aware of that. Fire trucks and ambulances are going to slow down slightly to be able to navigate these speed humps. But the city of Tulsa Fire Department and Police Department are aware of this. It is part of their city policy, and they're not in the way of this. They're not going to try and stop it to be able to provide emergency services to everybody. It is possible that people can speed up between the speed humps, which is why we limit those speeds to 600 foot. And if possible, get them closer, all the better. It provides less of an opportunity for people to gun it between the speed humps. There are those signs that someone talked about, the signs. People are like, I don't want a sign in my front yard. It's ugly looking. I don't want it. I get that. But the sign is there for safety purposes. It is not there for pretty looks. It's not there to try and increase property value. It's there for the safety of the people driving on the street to make them aware of this speed hump. Another downside is it can increase traffic on adjacent streets. I don't believe that will be a problem in this neighborhood because of the way your streets interweave. But if it's a neighborhood where you've got a series of north-south streets and east-west, people will just avoid the one block or the one street, jump over one block and drive up, and they'll speed over there. And there's been instances where we put speed humps on one street and it's not a few years longer, we are requested and we put speed humps on the other street. Again, the speed humps are for the people on that particular street that are having to deal with these increased speeds and volumes constantly that are endangering their property and their family. We've had situations where doors were ripped right off of cars because people are speeding through there. And this helps slow that down to prevent that from happening. Unfortunately, we've had people get hit. And again, this slows the speeds to make it safer for everybody on that street. So I hope that openness makes a little more sense to you, Mr. Duffy, on there are some drawbacks. And I appreciate you bringing up that point. And I'm glad I got this out to at least tell everybody these are the known issues that we are aware of.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jeremy,
I live on Sandusky.
Yes.
Oh, go ahead, Heather. Hi.
Hi.
Hi. I live directly on Sandusky, and every day I see a speeding vehicle. Every day. The bus that picks up our kids are directly in front of my house, and I literally saw a vehicle speed right through the bus stop.
Yep.
So this is a problem for us, and these are our children, our precious babies that we care about, not cosmetic, not how things look, to protect our children. So I thank you, Jeremy, for this, and I thank you, Heather, for making the effort of doing this because it means a lot to us, okay? And that's how I feel, and this has been a few years of trying to get this thing done, and I really hope we do. And John, Mr. Duffy, I really hope you see our side. I have a 3-year-old, I have a 10-year-old, and I want to be able to have my kid ride his bike and go down the sidewalk without having to rush in front and hold him because a fast car is going by. That's all I have to say, and I hope that changes you and make you rethink this. And I hope you pass this because it means a lot to us. Our children come first. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I live on the road as well, and I can see 2 or 3 people on this that live on this road, and I've personally witnessed 2 cars lock their brakes up and where their bumpers stop against a kid and almost kill them. And I know that some other people on this video right now have seen the same thing, and so there is a trade-off, and if the trade-off truly is kid safety, there's no, people, I know the Ferrari was kind of a joke, but I mean, really, what is the trade-off? If you say a kid's life is the most important thing, there is no but, or there is no second conversation. So, Jeremy, thank you for this, and for everybody on this that worked so hard to put this together. We appreciate it, and that's it.
The reason we started down this road a couple of years ago was because of those concerns that were just expressed. We had several of those concerns. And so we decided we would look at this and see if we would qualify and what could be done. And the board listened to the people on that street, and that's why we got to this point.
Well, thank you. We appreciate it. Thank you.
I would also like to add that I've been to every annual HOA meeting that's intended for the entire HOA since I moved here in 2015. And every year, speeding on this street has been brought up at that meeting. And I recognize that not everyone has been to the meetings, but for the people who are, that has been a concern. So this is not something that is started all of a sudden and has been tried, to be pushed through, because people have brought up this concern for many years. I think this year may be the only year it wasn't brought up because we had a lot of other issues we were dealing with. But I've also given updates at those annual meetings.
Is the board willing to go by the wishes of the HOA members in whole?
That's something that I cannot answer for the board because I'm only the president of the board. We'll have to talk to the board and see. At our last meeting, we discussed this issue, and not everyone was at the meeting because I had some people out of town, but those that were there still supported. We will check with the board again, and if anyone wants to appear at a board meeting to express their concerns, they're certainly welcome to do so. We had a member come at our last meeting over a different concern, and people are always welcome to come to our meetings. We have the annual meeting every year, and we try our best to get people to come to the annual meeting, but we get, about 10% representatives from all of the homeowners to come to the annual meeting. So, I don't hold out much hope that we can have a meeting and get a bunch of people to come. But we're willing to listen to people if they've got a valid input. But I will say that the input from the people who live on that street will carry more weight with me than the input of people who do not live on that street and are not impacted nearly as much.
Well, with all due respect, I disagree. I think your position is to represent the neighborhood, not the people on one street. That's for another conversation. I appreciate
Your objections are duly noted.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you're more than welcome to come to the meeting and make your pitch to the entire board.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you all for those comments. Any other comments? Well, like I said, we'll just hold off until we hear back from the board that you're still good with this or you want more time, and we'll just wait until you're ready for it.
Perfect.
Okay.
This is Aaron Massey. I just wanted to say thank you to Hugh and the Hoffheinzes, Travis, great comments, Darren Burns, Allison. I really don't want a minority John Duffy to really, he doesn't represent us. And I can give you testimonials all day long about, I saved a kid the other day who almost got hit by a car. My little ghost got hit outside. There's there's definitely a need. I've joked with Darren about getting a radar gun. I swear. So Hugh, you're doing it for the right reasons, and the city's doing it for the right reasons. John, I'm sorry, but for everyone that supports this, don't get discouraged and keep pushing forward, and let's do it for our kids the right reason. Thank you.
Please,
Agreed.
please.
Yeah.
Guys, I'm fine with it as long as the majority of the HOA members are okay with it. I don't like the way you snuck it behind our backs and got it approved without telling people what you're doing. That's not right. And that's just not the way to do business.
All right.
I would agree if it was something underhanded. I mean, you think there's a large contingent in the neighborhood that actually,
Yeah, there are a lot of people who are too scared to speak up, who do not want speed humps, and a lot of people that feel just like I do, that we got this letter that, hey, this has been done and the board has signed off on it. You know, and look, guys, I get that you're trying to do something good, and I understand that and I appreciate it. I particularly don't think that speed humps are the answer. I think there are better answers. Some of those have been put forth on our social media page, but that's something we need to discuss in the board meeting. That's not something we need to involve CEC or Jeremy with. Jeremy did an excellent presentation. I really appreciate all the information. I'm not oblivious to you guys' concerns about the kids at all. I've had kids myself. I get that. I know something needs to be done. I just don't think this is the answer. And I think that we need to have more discussion about it before we start installing speed bumps.
Very good.
hey, well, Hugh, let us know what our next steps here. And obviously we're going to support this any way we can, and are welcome to have a face-to-face meeting with anyone in the neighborhood about this.
Yeah.
So
Come sit on the corner of our,
well, we will invite you to our driveway too, if you'd like to.
come sit on our
And,
driveway
and
for an hour.
everyone can watch at 5 o'clock.
Yep.
So, Mr. Rackley, you're the president of the board, is that correct? The HOA board?
That's correct.
Okay, well, we will wait. Russell and I will wait until we hear from you the direction that the board wants to move forward. And so whenever your next board meeting is, or whenever this item is brought up, that way Mr. Duffy and others can voice their opinion, and same with everybody on the street. And we'll just hold off until we hear from you to allow the HOA members to have their voice heard.
The board will start discussions probably tomorrow on it via media. And then we'll go from there and see what we can do about maybe having a meeting and getting, letting some of these people know that want to attend and make their pitch. Our next meeting is not scheduled until next month. So we would rather not delay the project that long. We would prefer to move along on it a little quicker than that. So I'll poll the board tomorrow and see what we can work out. See if we can work out something to have some more discussions internally within the HOA and not bother you with it.
Yeah, I'd like to also, I mean, if we look at the bylaws, if there's some, what the rules are around reversing this, what it would take to reverse it, and obviously make sure within our rights to do it in the first place. But if not, if so, like what it takes to reverse it, and if the neighborhood has the will to do that.
Well, we also need to look at the fact that since we've met all the criteria, if the board tries to back out now, what would preclude you, the residents on that street, from taking legal action for us failing to protect your interests?
I think the downside on the lawsuit from a kid getting killed is going to be much worse than the contingent of the neighborhood that'd be upset for whatever damages they could come up with that these speed bumps created for them. I would agree with you on that. I would take that risk much faster.
This is Darren, and I just got a real quick question, and it's really towards, I guess, Mr. Duffy. You were saying there are alternatives, I guess. And I guess what I don't want to do is get in the meeting, HOA, and then we don't have an expert on the matter like Jeremy, who is a licensed engineer, traffic engineer, and knows, along with the city, that they have concluded that this is the best method for that. And these other opportunities and alternatives come up. Who's to, there to speak. So do you have any now? Or I guess what I'm trying to say is then maybe we invite Jeremy so he could come speak on some of the other methods of maybe why they weren't chosen by the cities to be the best speed reduction.
Mr. Burns, I'll be happy to attend your board meetings so long as I'm available. I'll be happy to do that. And I have attended a number of board meetings, HOA meetings over the years, and that's part of our job responsibility is to educate everybody. And so I'm more than happy to do that as long as I'm told when that meeting is. And if you want me there, I'll be happy to attend if I'm available.
So to answer your
Appreciate
question, since you pointed it towards me, I'll answer that question.
Yeah.
There have been some other things that we've discussed on the social media page, some that a lot of people think would be more effective. And just a point of clarification, Jeremy did not say that he had statistics showing speed humps were the most effective. What he said was for the price, they're effective. There definitely are, and Jeremy, correct me if I'm wrong, and I don't think you will, there are for sure more effective measures you can take. They cost a little bit more money, yes, but there are more effective. So I don't want anybody here to think that speed humps are the most effective measure. That is not what Jeremy said, and I think you will back me up there.
You're absolutely right. There are other methods, but they cost more money. And so the city looking at the economics of it for safety, durability, and cost, again, we're wanting something that we can install that will last a very long time. And there are other things that might be less intrusive, but you're going to have to replace them more often. And the city is not going to invest money on some method that is going to, in the long haul, cost more money. So there's been, you're right, there's other alternatives. Some of them are incredibly more expensive than the speed humps. These are indeed the most economical to get the job done. And the city has researched this thoroughly. And this is the choice they've made, and this is what they've implemented. And they've been doing this program for, I don't know, a dozen plus years or so. It's been a long time. We've been in on the last 5 years of it, but the city's been doing this program for a long time. In fact, they modified their speed humps. They used to be 12 foot long instead of 22 foot. And again, we're all in the practice of engineering, and I use that word practice very lightly. There's things that we've done for decades, and it doesn't mean that this is the best way to do it. And we're constantly trying to reevaluate and improve the way we design buildings, projects, roadways, whatever. And the city did make a change from the 12 foot to the 22 foot. It cost more money to do that, but it was quieter, it was more durable, and it was less intrusive to those people driving. And you could actually drive closer to the posted speed limit with the 22 foot wide speed hump than with the 12. Therefore, it would be less intrusive for those people trying to drive through their neighborhood. And so the city, again, vetted those and came up with the 22 foot long speed hump. And that's what we currently use. But you're right, Mr. Duffy, there's other things out there. They will cost more money, or they will need to be replaced more often. Therefore, they cost more money. But I'll be happy to, if you want me to come to the HOA meeting, I'll be happy to listen to anything and provide my engineering opinion on it and what we've done in Tulsa and what has worked and what hasn't.
Jeremy, you may not be able to answer this question, but I'm going to ask because you seem like you're somewhat of an expert on the subject, certainly more than anybody here. You had stated earlier that the statistics show that the average speed reduction achieved with speed hump is 2 to 3 miles per hour. There are more expensive alternatives. Are there some alternatives that show an average speed reduction more than 2 to 3 miles per hour? Because I don't think that the neighborhood is really looking for a 2 to 3 mile per hour average speed reduction.
Wasn't there a caveat on the high end of that when people approached 40 miles an hour that it was more than 2 or 3?
You're exactly right. We look at the 85th percentile, and that is our gauge of what is warranted and what is not. So
you're saying it may stop the 40 mile per hour speeders, which
it will. In fact, Mary Kate, correct me if I'm wrong. We had one neighborhood 2 or 3 years ago that people were going 75 mile per hour in their 70s.
Yeah.
Wow. They were dragging on the street in the middle of the night. When we put these counters out, they not only track volumes, but they track volumes at appropriate time periods every 15 minutes. We can break it down to every minute if we want, but we typically break it out into hours. And so we know when people are speeding and when they're not. And a lot of the shenanigans going on, especially in certain parts of Tulsa, is late at night. It's 2 o'clock in the morning and people are zipping 70 mile an hour through the neighborhood. It stops that. it brings those things down into the 20s or the low 30s. And if they go faster than that, they will damage their vehicle. They are intended to reduce the speed. And so you're right. Since this neighborhood, the 85th percentile was barely over that 30 mile an hour, the 85th percentile will probably only fall 2 or 3 points. And the reason it will do that are those high outliers, the people driving 40 mile an hour, 45, they're going to get brought down. The people that are driving 25 mile per hour, they're going to be able to go 25 mile per hour. So
Nobody's worried about the person going 28.
Right.
You go 25
over it. Don't hold a cup of coffee in your hand or you're going to make a mess. You'll burn yourself. But like I said, when we test drive these things, I see how fast I can go without it trying to damage my car. It's the company's car, so it's not mine. If it damages it, oh well. But I do try and go faster than the speed limit to see how is this going to affect me. And normally I feel very uncomfortable going that fast over those speed humps.
John, what is your, well, actually, hold on. So if we have to engage this conversation, and Hugh, I don't know the bylaws, so you'll have to guide me here, but you started out saying that you were upset, you didn't mind it, but you were upset that you felt that it was an end around. And then your second comment was there's better options than speed humps.
Right.
So are you saying if there was some other option that were more, I don't know, aesthetically pleasing or whatever it is that what you are proposing? Or are you proposing just the process? You said you represented people that were not here and were afraid to speak up.
Right. So
but then we pivoted onto, well, there's better ways to do it that cost more money. What is the middle ground for you? If we have to engage it, and you might tell me that we don't have to engage this, but out of curiosity, what are we driving at?
Oh, I think we do need, I'm 100% in favor of engaging it, and I want to be involved. Listen, the first I'd heard that we were actually going to put speed bumps in is when we got this letter. I talked to a lot of the other neighbors. It's been an issue for forever. It always is. But I think the majority of people had no idea that this effort was going on. And when I say we, I'm speaking on behalf of me and some of our neighbors, feel like this was done without the neighborhood being notified it was being done. In fact, a few years ago, we did some sort of an informal survey in the neighborhood to judge whether we could get support for speed bumps. And it was an overwhelming response that the neighborhood didn't want them. I don't know if that was because they didn't understand or maybe they weren't aware of issues going on. I mean, it's been very enlightening to me to sit here and listen to Allison's concerns about her children, yours, Travis. I mean, everyone's. I'm concerned about it. Listen, I drive down that road and every day I see kids out there playing. It scares me to death because I know that road is susceptible to speeders. It's a main thoroughfare, so it's a problem. I am not against doing something to slow people down. I just don't think that speed humps are the best answer. I have supported some other alternatives on our social media page that you all may have seen. But my main contention is if we're going to do this, I feel strongly that the board should have consulted the HOA as a whole and not a very small percentage of people who live on that street, because the speed humps do affect us all. The response to that I can take a different route out of the neighborhood is ridiculous.
You made a reference to a survey that was sent out some years ago about speed humps.
Yeah, and I don't have a copy of it. I wish I did, but
I wish I did too. I've lived here since 2007, and to my knowledge, there has never been a survey done on speed humps to the entire neighborhood. And I have been the president of the association for all but about 4 years of that time frame.
Well, maybe it would be time to do it now. I think that'd be a great idea.
Well, maybe so, but I really don't believe there has been one sent out to the entire neighborhood in years past that was overwhelmingly against speed humps.
Okay, I could be mistaken. There was a lot of conversation about this about 3 years ago, and there were a ton of people that spoke up that didn't want them. Let's do a survey. If the majority of the neighborhoods want them and think that's the best option, I'm all for it. I'm not here to stop.
The survey, as far as I'm concerned, the survey doesn't matter. And this is not the forum to talk about the survey. If we want to talk about the survey, we'll do it at an internal board meeting where we have people there as guests to express their opinion. We don't need to tie up these folks with our internal squabbling.
That's exactly what I said 10 minutes ago.
Yeah, so this could go round and round all night. Hugh, if you all can reference the bylaws, and if this decision was made within the bylaws, my vote would be to move forward on it, obviously. And if for some reason we need to engage it, my ask is that you let us know. And obviously you will have a large contingent of people that are for it. We'll probably bring our kids with us, and anybody that says, no, we're not going to do it, they're welcome to stand there and look us in the face and say it.
And this is Darren. I got a question going back to alternatives. So if it was decided upon and agreed upon that a different alternative would be installed, is this something that the HOA would be responsible for financially in its entirety, like a private street is, like the maintenance on that? Or since the city has agreed upon, installing the speed humps, would the money allocated for the speed humps could be put towards the alternative, measure that is used for speed reduction?
That's a good question. I was going to go there real quickly right before you answered asked that question. And first off, the speed hump is the city's method of slowing traffic calming. They're not into alternative forms. If those things are done, it is a public street. So the city is not just going to allow the HOA to go out and do whatever they want on that street unless it passes what the city would allow. And in this case, the city doesn't allow public people just go out and do whatever they want on that street. There's been some experiments that have been done on streets with painting and different things, trying to see how will channeling traffic work. And they've allowed that on rare occasions. But if it was a private street, you're all welcome to do whatever you want. But with it being a public street, this is the city's way of handling that. Correct me if I'm wrong, Russell.
Let me clarify that. You said that regarding paint, the city does not allow paint to be put on the streets. Any pavement markings have to be in thermoplastic, but temporary markings can be in chalk, but the city does not allow paint for temporary markings.
I think that it was a discussion around if we chose an alternative method, if the city would basically syndicate that to a level at which, or sponsor it to a level at which their expense level would be with a speed bump, and then we would then support that privately, any excess.
I don't believe the city would do that, correct?
But the city's preferred method of traffic calming is speed humps. If it's something other than speed humps, it'd probably have to go through the engineering services for a full design of the neighborhood for some other measures. Speed humps are the least expensive way to implement the reduction in speed, and that's the way the city prefers. But there are other ways, but it's a lot more expensive and takes a lot more time to get them approved.
So you guys have studied at length, I'm sure. So you've got kind of an idea of the delta there. I know the city's obviously under budget constraints, and therefore will look for something that's as effective or the most effective that it can be for its money. And you've spent a lot of time researching this, I'm sure.
I'm not aware of a more cost-effective way of reducing speed. I mean, some people are like, keep the police out there the whole time, it'll reduce the speed. Well, it will for that one day when they're there. And then the other 364 days, speed's going to be right back up. So it's not a sustainable way of reducing the speed. The speed humps are a police officer in 5 places as it is right now, and 5 places along that street to reduce the speed. And it's very effective to do so.
Okay. Well, Hugh, we will look for your guidance, and just let us know whatever we can do to help or participate going forward.
Okay, we'll get with the board and start some discussions and see what the board position is, and possibly have a meeting as soon as possible to get any dissension and support. We'll want both sides there, and then the board will make their decision.
Perfect.
Thank you, everybody.
Russell,
Thank you all
Jeremy,
for your time.
Mary Kate,
Jeremy,
guys.
everybody,
Thank you.
Thank you all so much for your time. Y'all have a good evening.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you all. Y'all have a good evening.